My name is Dr. John H. Watson, formerly of the Army Medical Department and for many years the companion and chronicler of the strange adventures of my friend Sherlock Holmes. Those who have read my previous accounts will know that our residence at Baker Street was often the scene of curious visitors and extraordinary tales. Yet I venture to think that of all the cases which it has been my privilege to record, there is none more singular than the one which began with the unexpected revelation of Holmes's family connections, and which introduced me to a man whose fate was more perilous than any I could imagine. This, dear listener, is the adventure of the Greek interpreter. One sultry evening in the late summer, the air thick with the dust of the London streets, the gas lamps were beginning to glow, throwing long golden streaks upon the polished surface of Baker Street, when I returned from my rounds to find Holmes seated in his usual chair. He was ensconced in his dressing gown, a long pipe between his lips, and an expression upon his aquiline face that bespoke both abstraction and amusement. Holmes, I believe you are amused by something unseen, I remarked, placing my hat upon the stand. You have that peculiar sparkle in your eye, which suggests that a problem is even now being dissected within your brain.
Elementary, my dear Watson, said he, without removing the pipe from his lips. I am merely considering how seldom you or any of our acquaintances reflect upon the powers of hereditary influence and how strangely those powers manifest themselves.
Hereditary influence, you say? Do you allude to the inheritance of physical traits or something deeper?
Both, Watson. Oh, in fact, I have a relative who demonstrates with remarkable clearness the transmission of certain mental faculties. You may have believed that I was the only member of my family blessed or cursed, depending on one's view, with peculiar faculties of observation and deduction. Yet you are mistaken.
Indeed, Holmes, this is astonishing. In all the years I have known you, you have never spoken of kith or kin. You have seemed as one entirely isolated, detached from family ties.
Because, my dear fellow, the topic has seldom arisen. Yet it may interest you to know that I have a brother, an elder brother to be precise, who possesses powers far greater than mine, though he lacks the energy and ambition to employ them in active life.
A brother, Holmes, you amaze me. Pray, why have you never mentioned him before?
Because, as I have said, the matter has seldom come to the surface. But you shall meet him tonight, Watson, for he has promised to call upon us. Mycroft Holmes is his name. And if you imagine that I have any special claim to genius, you will find that I am but an ordinary man compared with him.
Your words are scarcely believable, Holmes. I have seen you unravel mysteries that baffled Scotland Yard, and I cannot picture any man whose powers exceed your own.
Nevertheless, you shall see for yourself. He should arrive presently, unless his indolence keeps him seated at the Diogenes Club, which is his natural habitat.
Scarcely had Holmes spoken when there came a sharp knock upon the door, followed by Mrs. Hudson's voice announcing a visitor. A moment later, the door opened, and in walked a man who bore a striking resemblance to my companion, though of a larger and stouter build. His face was broad, his features less sharp than Holmes's, but there was in his eyes the same keen gleam of intelligence, softened by an air of indifference, as though life's details were too trivial to stir him.
Sherlock, said the newcomer, in a voice deeper and more deliberate than Holmes's. And this, I take it, is your faithful friend, Dr. Watson. I have heard much of you, sir.
And I of you, Mr. Mycroft Holmes, I replied, bowing slightly. Come on. Your brother has been most reticent on the subject of his family, but he has spoken this evening with admiration of your talents.
Admiration. That is strong language indeed from Sherlock. Yet he knows as well as I that my faculties are but toys, useless in the practical field which he adorns. I can reason from data, but I cannot, like him, go in search of those data. Oh, his book adoree he is an active agent. I am but a sedentary thinker. So we may.
Do not be deceived, Watson, said Holmes, smiling faintly. Mycroft has often solved problems which would have puzzled me had they been laid before me without preparation. Yet he cares not for fame or for action. He lives in the Diogenes Club, where silence is golden and comes abroad only when the world presses too hard upon him.
Thus began my acquaintance with Mycroft Holmes Commando, a man whose presence seemed to fill the room with quiet intellect. Yet it was not until later that evening, when we had accompanied him back to the Diogenes Club, that I began to perceive how extraordinary were his connections and how dangerous was the case he now brought before us. The Diogenes Club, as Holmes explained, was a singular institution founded for the use of gentlemen who disdained the company of their fellows. Its principal rule was that no member should take the least notice of another. Conversation was forbidden, save in the stranger's room. Here we sat, with Mycroft presiding in his accustomed chair, when he introduced to us a thin, nervous gentleman whose dark eyes and olive complexion proclaimed his foreign birth.
Sherlock, Watson, allow me to present Mr. Millars, a Greek interpreter of some repute. He has this day encountered an adventure which, though unfinished, may require your particular talents to resolve.
Gentlemen, said the stranger in a voice trembling with suppressed agitation, I have, by the merest chance, escaped from a most sinister business, and I know not whether by speaking of it I may bring danger upon myself. Yet I can no longer keep silent, for an innocent life may hang upon my testimony.
You are among friends here, Mr. Millars, I said earnestly. Pray, recount to us every detail, withholding nothing, for you may be certain that Mr. Sherlock Holmes will not rest until the truth is brought to light.
Quite so, Holmes added, leaning forward with that intensity which transformed his whole being. Spare no circumstance, however trivial, Mr. Milas. What seems insignificant may prove the key to the whole matter.
The interpreter drew a deep breath, and with many gestures, for he was excitable by nature, he began to tell his tale. Thus the strange adventure unfolded before us, a tale of coercion, of violence, and of a mysterious Greek prisoner held against his will in the heart of London. Little did I know, as I sat listening to that man's words, that before the adventure was ended, we would be plunged into a drama of life and death, such as even Sherlock Holmes had seldom encountered. And so, dear listeners, begins our chronicle. In the next part, Mr. Hebless Melis should recount to us the chilling circumstances of his abduction, and Holmes will begin to weave from those threads a tapestry of deduction that may mean salvation or destruction for an unknown soul. We three, Holmes, Mycroft, and I sat intently within the hushed, stranger's room of the Diogenes Club, our attention fixed upon the trembling form of Mr. Millars, the interpreter. His nervous hands twisted together, his eyes darted from one face to another as though to ensure that his words would not be overheard. The very atmosphere seemed charged with suspense, as though invisible ears pressed against the panelled walls to catch the unfolding tale. At length, he began.
Gentlemen, I am a professional interpreter specializing in the Greek tongue, though I am proficient in several others. And as you may know, such work often brings one into contact with all sorts of people. Some weeks are quiet, others bring tasks at the most unusual hours. 2 nights ago, I was seated in my modest chambers in Kensington when a stranger called upon me. He was a tall, dark man with a heavy moustache, dressed with a certain air of rough prosperity. He addressed me with brusque urgency.
Malas's voice quavered, yet his recollection was precise, as if fear had etched every moment indelibly upon his memory.
He said, Mr. Malaz, you are the interpreter, are you not? I have need of your services immediately. You will be well rewarded. I inquired what the business was, and he replied only that it was a matter requiring discretion and haste. Before I could press him further, he insisted that we leave at once. I had no time to consult a friend or send a message. He hurried me into a waiting brougham, and thus began my strange ordeal.
You went willingly with the stranger, sir? Did you feel no suspicion, no hesitation at entering an unknown carriage?
At first, Dr. Watson, I confess I felt little alarm. Such abrupt calls are not uncommon in my profession. Yet I soon became uneasy, for as the carriage rolled on, I observed that the windows had been covered with opaque paper, so that I could see nothing of the streets we traversed. I could not even perceive the direction of our journey. I attempted to raise the blind, but my companion's hand gripped my wrist with surprising force. I must beg you, sir, to remain passive, said he in a tone that brooked no argument. Our destination must remain secret. You will not be ill-treated, provided you do as you are told. His manner was civil, yet I felt the menace behind his words.
The blinds were secured, you say, and the route entirely concealed from you. Holmes interjected softly, his keen eyes fixed upon the interpreter.
Yes, Mr. Holmes, completely concealed. I attempted to note the turns of the carriage by feeling the sway of the body and the sound of the wheels. We drove for perhaps an hour, though my sense of time grew confused. At length, the vehicle stopped and I was hurried out. The night air was cool, and I judged that we were in some suburban district, for I heard no great traffic.
Mr. Millers paused, passed a trembling hand across his brow, and continued with renewed urgency. No, Lars! Oh,
I was ushered into a house, the door of which was immediately locked behind us. The place was dimly lit, and I was conducted into a room furnished in a sparse but comfortable manner. There sat another man, a smaller, paler fellow with a sinister smile and restless eyes. "Well," he greeted me politely, though his manner was cold. It was he who explained the purpose of my presence. "You are required," said he, "to act as interpreter between ourselves and a certain foreign gentleman who understands nothing of our tongue. You will ask him the questions we dictate, and you will faithfully render his replies. Should you attempt to communicate anything beyond this, you will be held to account. Do you comprehend?"
surely you protested, Mr. Millers, for he must have snisper boarding Brad. To be compelled to act in such a manner would arouse the suspicion of any honest man.
"Indeed," I protested, "Doctor," but my words availed me little. The two men exchanged glances and pressed me to comply, hinting that refusal might endanger my own safety. Reluctantly, I consented, though inwardly I resolved to use my wits to discover what I could of their designs.
Then, here Millers leaned forward, his voice lowered, as though the memory itself chilled him.
They conducted me to another chamber, bare and cheerless, save for a table and a chair. There, seated in the gloom, was a man whose appearance struck me with pity. He was of middle age, with dark hair and beard, but his face was pale and emaciated, as though from confinement. His hands were bound to the arms of the chair, and across his mouth was fastened a broad strip of plaster. Only his eyes, large, dark, and eloquent, were free to express the agony of his condition.
Good heavens, I exclaimed involuntarily. They held him prisoner then, beyond all doubt.
Proceed, Mr. Mellus, Holmes urged quietly. What questions were you instructed to put to this unfortunate gentleman?
They bade me ask his name, his origin, and his purpose in England. When the plaster was removed, I spoke to him in Greek, saying, "Sir, these men require that I ask you certain questions." "Who are you?" he answered in a faint voice. "I am Paul Kratides, a Greek from Athens." At this, the two men pressed me to inquire whether he would consent to sign certain documents which they placed before him. Kratides replied with firmness, "I refuse. You may do what you will with me, but I will not sign." I rendered his words faithfully, though I longed to encourage him. They grew angry and threatened him, but he remained resolute. I dared, under cover of translation, to whisper, "You are in England! Take courage! What is your plight?" He looked at me with gratitude, but before he could reply more, the men grew suspicious and ordered me to desist from further commentary.
The interpreter's voice quavered as he recalled the perilous moment when discovery seemed imminent.
Nevertheless, I managed by stealth to elicit certain facts. He told me that he had come to London in pursuit of his sister Sophie, who had become entangled with one of these villains. He believed she was being deceived and perhaps coerced into some disgraceful union. He begged me to assist him, but alas, I was powerless. Each time I sought to prolong our exchanges, the ruffians grew impatient.
Did you perceive the appearance of this sister? Holmes asked keenly. He masked coolly, or hear mention of her name from the captors.
I did not see her, but I gathered from their angry words that she was in the house, unwilling to comply with their demands. They spoke of her in tones of irritation, as though she were an obstacle to their schemes. The pale man with the sinister smile, I think he was the leader, pressed Kratides to sign some settlement or consent to a marriage contract. But Kratides was steadfast. I believe his resistance was the only thing preventing them from consummating their design.
And how did you escape from this dreadful situation, Mr. Millars?
After some time, they appeared satisfied that no progress could be made. They forced the plaster once more across Kratides' mouth and conducted me back to the carriage. Again, the blinds were drawn, and after a long drive, I was set down near my own rooms in Kensington. Before leaving me, the mustached ruffian warned me sternly that if I spoke a word of what I had seen, I should regret it bitterly. Yet I could not rest. My conscience torments me, for the fate of Kratides, and perhaps of his sister Sophie, hangs in the balance.
Mr. Millars ended his tale with a gesture of despair, his dark eyes beseeching Holmes as though the great detective were the sole anchor in a sea of peril. Holmes remained silent for some moments, his thin fingers steepled, his gaze fixed upon the floor. Young Mycroft, meanwhile, leaned back in his chair with an expression of detached contemplation. Holmes, I said softly, what do you make of it? Surely this is a matter of the gravest urgency.
Indeed, Watson. It is a case most dark and dangerous, yet there are clues if we but follow them. The length of the drive, the condition of the prisoner, the nature of the documents, all suggest a plot of considerable audacity. Mr. Melas has done well, remarkably well, under circumstances that might have unnerved a less courageous man.
Still, brother, said Mycroft in his deliberate tones, the position is precarious. We have no address, no names beyond those given. What hope is there of tracing these villains in this vast city?
There is always hope where observation and inference go hand in hand, Holmes answered with sudden energy. Watson, you perceive, do you not, the significance of the bound hands, the plastered mouth, Holmes, the concealed journey?
I perceive the cruelty, Holmes, but I confess the deductions elude me.
Elementary, Watson, elementary. The villains feared not only resistance but communication. Thus, the plaster, lest Kratides appeal for aid. The blinds of the carriage betray that their house lies within reach of London, but not too near, or the concealment would be needless. The sister's presence points to a domestic plot, marriage, inheritance, coercion, and lastly, Mr. Malas's courage in whispering the truth may yet save them, for now we know that 2 lives hang upon our speed.
Holmes's voice rang with conviction, and I saw that the strange light of battle had kindled in his eyes. He sprang from his chair, paced the room, and then turned upon us with sudden decision.
We must act, and at once. Mr. Melas, you must place yourself under our protection. Mycroft, use your government connections to obtain any registry of Greeks newly arrived in London. Watson, be prepared, for we may have to set forth before dawn. Somewhere, at this very hour, poor Kratides lies bound and gagged, and Sophie, his sister, is in peril worse than death. It is a race between us and those villains, and I do not intend to lose.
At those words, the tension in the room rose like the crackle before a storm. Melas clasped his hands in gratitude while Mycroft inclined his heavy head in assent. For my part, I felt my heart quicken, for I knew that once again we stood upon the threshold of an adventure where failure meant tragedy, and only the genius of Sherlock Holmes could guide us through the darkness. Thus ended the interpreter's confession, and thus began our desperate pursuit. In the next part, dear listeners, I shall recount how Holmes set his vast intellect to the task of unraveling the riddle, and how the first faint clues led us through the labyrinth of London toward a house of secrets and of terror. Our meeting at the Diogenes Club ended in haste, for Holmes was restless with the urgency of action. Mr. Melas, though weary and shaken, accompanied us willingly back to Baker Street, where he was lodged for the night under our protection. Mycroft returned to his governmental duties, promising to make inquiries at once regarding any Greek visitors of late arrival in London. As for Holmes, he spent the hours until dawn pacing ceaselessly, his keen eyes gleaming in the lamplight and his thin hands twitching with suppressed energy. Holmes, said I at one point, you will wear yourself to the bone if you do not take rest. The dawn will bring fresh labor, and you will require all your strength.
Rest? Bah! Watson, my mind is a machine that grows sharper with use. Consider, my dear fellow, the bearings of the case. We have here a Greek gentleman, Paul Kratides, detained against his will, coerced to sign documents with his sister Sophie in the hands of villains. The motive is transparent, either inheritance or marriage. What say you?
It seems plain enough, Holmes. Holmes doesn't get. Yet with no address and no clue to the villain's identity, how can we hope to intervene?
Elementary. The world is a web, Watson, and a single thread once grasped may lead us to the center. The mustached ruffian who fetched Melas cannot be entirely invisible. He spoke English fluently, with no accent of the foreigner. He is a Londoner, or at least long resident. His companion, the pale man with restless eyes, was the master. Their household must include servants, tradesmen, neighbors. Somewhere they leave traces. It is for us to find the line and follow it.
Thus reassured, I held my peace, though I marveled as always at the boldness of Holmes's reasoning. The night wore on, and in the grey light of morning Mycroft himself appeared, more brisk than usual, bearing several documents.
I have here, said he, laying them upon the table, a list of recent arrivals from Greece who have registered with their consulate. Among them, one name caught my attention. Paul Kratides, age 42, of Athens, reported to be visiting London in pursuit of his sister. It corresponds exactly to our man. But observe, there is no record of his sister Sophie in the same registry. Her presence in England is therefore irregular, suggesting she has been enticed or abducted without formal notice.
Excellent, Mycroft. You grow almost energetic. Holmes exclaimed with rare warmth. This confirms Milas's account and proves that Kratides came here upon a mission of rescue. Now, what of Greeks connected with shady dealings or sudden wealth?
There is mention of a certain Harold Latimer, an English adventurer known for dubious financial schemes, who has lately been associated with a man of Greek extraction, Wilson Kemp by name. The pair have been seen in the company of a young Greek woman of striking beauty, believed to be Sophie Kratides. This is the rumor, though confirmation is wanting.
Latimer and Kemp. The very names ring the villainy, cried Holmes. Watson, we have our quarry. Mr. Melas, you shall accompany us, for your eyes alone can identify the house wherein Kratides is confined.
Gladly, Mr. Holmes, though I tremble at the danger, yet if by my aid we may save the lives of that unfortunate man and his sister, I am prepared for all hazards.
Call! Thus resolved, we set out upon our quest. Holmes began with his customary round of inquiries, cabmen at the Kensington stands, tradesmen along the route, and even a friendly sergeant at the local station. He reasoned that the villain's brougham, with its drawn blinds, must nevertheless have passed observed at some point in its nocturnal journey. Holmes, I asked as we paused at a street corner, Buiganscazo, how can you expect these men to recall one carriage among hundreds that traverse London by night?
Because, my dear Watson, human memory is more retentive than you suppose, especially where something unusual occurs. A carriage with blinds drawn tight at an hour when most cabs go unshuttered. Such an anomaly is remarked upon, even if unconsciously. Trust me, we shall find some witness.
And indeed, Holmes's confidence was justified. At the third cab stand we visited, an elderly driver recalled having seen such a vehicle pass late at night, bearing two men and a third figure seated within.
Aye, sir, I remember it well, the cabman declared. 'Twas a close carriage, blinds down, and the taller gent kept looking out sharp as if afeared of pursuit. They came from Kensington Way and turned off toward Hampstead.
Toward Hampstead, Holmes repeated softly. Excellent, we narrow the circle. Did you note aught of the horse or the carriage itself? How low, how are?
Dark bay gilding, sir, with a white blaze. The carriage was a landau, rather shabby. I should know it again if I set eyes on it. Glad.
You have earned your sovereign, my good fellow, Holmes said, tossing him the coin. Watson, the hunt quickens. Toward Hampstead lies our path.
The day wore on in ceaseless inquiry. Checking a back mime retraced rumors of a large house rented some months earlier by two gentlemen answering to Latimer and Kemp. It stood isolated in a quiet lane, its blinds perpetually drawn, its gates rarely opened. Servants were seldom seen, and the tradesmen who supplied it spoke of secrecy and sudden tempers. More than once, a young lady of foreign appearance was glimpsed at an upper window, her face pale as if from sorrow. "That must be Sophie Kratides Holmes," I whispered as we stood in view of the house, our eyes fixed upon its shuttered windows. "What a prison for a young woman!"
Undoubtedly, he murmured. Note the drawn curtains, the neglected garden, the air of concealment. Yes, Watson, this is our place, but we cannot act rashly. To rush in unprepared would be to endanger both prisoners. We must devise a stratagem.
Holmes was never so formidable as when he stood before an obstacle that demanded cunning rather than, force. He drew us back from the lane and with quick steps led us to a secluded corner where we might confer without fear of observation.
Here is my plan. Latimer and Kemp are desperate men. Direct assault is out of the question. We must either lure them from the house or gain entry under pretense. Rister, email us. You are known to them. They will expect you to return should they require your services again. We may use this to our advantage.
You mean that I should go again into their power? Cried Melas, his face blanching. They would kill me outright if they suspected treachery.
Fear not, Mr. Melas. You shall not go alone. Watson and I will be at hand, and the police shall be summoned to follow at a signal. But your presence is the key. Without it, we cannot hope to approach the prisoners unseen.
Holmes, I must protest. To expose Mr. Mellors again to such villain seems monstrous. Surely we can find another method.
Watson, your heart is as ever in the right place, but your judgment is clouded by sentiment. The risk is real, but without risk we can achieve nothing. I shall be at Melas's side, and you, my dear fellow, shall guard the rear. Between us, and with Lestrade's men close at hand, we shall bring this matter to a crisis.
Thus, after some persuasion, Mellors consented to the perilous part assigned him. Holmes dispatched a note to Inspector Lestrade, whose practical cooperation had often aided our efforts in the past, and by late evening all was arranged. We would wait near the house in Hampstead, ready to act the moment the villains revealed themselves. The hours of that long vigil remain deeply etched in my memory. The summer night was sultry, the sky overcast, and a hush lay upon the lane. Holmes crouched beside me with the stillness of a hunting cat, his sharp features pale in the gloom. Melas trembled but bore himself bravely, while Lestrade and two constables kept watch some distance behind us. At intervals, the sound of carriage wheels drifted faintly from the main road, but otherwise all was silent. "Holmes," I whispered once, "do you think they will indeed summon Melas tonight? What if they choose another interpreter or proceed without one?"
They dare not, Holmes returned in a low voice. Their victim speaks nothing but Greek. They require Melas's services if they are to wring his consent. Sooner or later, they must send for him. Patience, Watson. Patience is the hunter's virtue.
Midnight approached, and still no sign came. My nerves, I confess, grew taut as violin strings. Then, at last, faint and distant, came the rumble of wheels upon the lane. A carriage drew up at the gate of the sinister house, and a tall figure stepped out, none other than Harold Latimer, his dark moustache unmistakable in the lamplight. He glanced about swiftly, then entered the house. A few minutes later, the door opened again, and he emerged, striding toward the road where he hailed another cab. Holmes's eyes gleamed.
The moment comes. He goes to fetch Melas. Steady, my friends, steady. All hangs upon the next hour.
My heart throbbed as I grasped the handle of my revolver. Beside me, Holmes remained utterly calm, every nerve poised for action. Thus we waited, the shadows deepening around us, while fate itself seemed to pause upon the threshold of that lonely house. In the next part, dear listeners, you shall hear how our vigil was rewarded, how Holmes pitted his genius against the desperate cunning of Latimer and Kemp, and how we came at last to the house of captivity. The hour had come. The narrow lane in Hampstead was shrouded in darkness, the gas lamps casting long, trembling shadows across the cobblestones. Holmes crouched beside me behind a low wall, his keen eyes fixed upon the house where Paul Kratides and his sister Sophie were held. Mr. Milas, though pale and tense, stood ready to perform the role which would draw the villains into our carefully prepared trap. Lestrade's men were concealed a few yards away, instructed to wait for the signal that Holmes would give. Every nerve in my body hummed with anticipation, yet I dared not move a muscle.
Watson, Holmes whispered, observe the position of the shutters. The upper windows are drawn tight, but there is a glimmer of light from the small side window. That is our line of sight. Mr. Melas, are you ready to assume your role?
I am, Mr. Holmes, though I feel as if my courage might fail me, he said in a hushed tone, his fingers twisting together nervously. I shall follow your instructions exactly, for I would not imperil the prisoners by any mistake.
Excellent. Remember, all you have to do is convince them of your compliance. Leave the rest to us. And Watson, hold yourself in readiness. The moment the doors are opened, you must be prepared to act.
The minutes stretched interminably. The night was still, save for the faint hoot of an owl and the rustle of leaves in the wind. Then, at last, the sound we had longed to hear, the creak of the front gate being unlatched. Holmes's eyes glimmered with a subtle light.
Here they come. Watch them closely, Watson. Note every gesture, every movement. The slightest hesitation may betray their intentions.
Mr. Tobbery dared. Melas stepped forward, pretending to be calm and deferential, though I could see the tremor in his shoulders. He approached the house with measured steps, and the door opened. Sighed, the pale man with restless eyes. Wilson Kemp greeted him first, his expression a mixture of irritation and expectation.
You are punctual, as expected, Kemp said sharply. Come in, we have pressing business with you.
I come as you requested, Melas replied in Greek, his voice steady though low. I will perform the work you require, as always.
Holmes and I remained in the shadow, concealed by the thick hedgerow and the darkness. Every heartbeat seemed amplified in the stillness. I could see the tension on Melas's face, the minute glances he cast toward the windows. Hey, my tease. Then, at last, the door to the side room where the prisoners were held opened slightly, and a faint flicker of candlelight illuminated the interior. A heart leaped. We had a glimpse of Sophie Kratides, her pained face shadowed by fear.
Steady, Watson, Holmes whispered. Observe the candlelight, the posture of the prisoners. Their fear is genuine. Patience, and we shall act at the critical instant.
Melas was led into the house, his form swallowed by the gloom. A low murmur of voices followed, as though the villains were giving him instructions. Then came the sound that made my blood run cold, a muffled cry, quickly suppressed. Coiner's indication of the what had attempted to speak, and Kemp's hand had silenced him. Holmes's gaze did not waver. He had anticipated this moment.
Lestrade, he whispered, touching my arm, we go in now. Watch the signals, and be ready to support me. I shall draw their attention, and the constables will close in simultaneously.
Reapproached the side window. Holmes's thin fingers manipulated the latch with the skill of one accustomed to stealth and cunning. The window opened silently, and he slipped inside, followed by me. The interior was dimly lit, and the shadows of the furniture danced across the walls. We moved with absolute quiet, each step measured, every breath controlled. The room held the unmistakable scent of anxiety and confinement, every detail Holmes noted with that extraordinary eye of his.
Observe, Watson, he whispered, the bindings upon Kratides. They are crude, yet tight. His hands are bruised, but not broken, a sign that the villains intended to coerce without killing. The plaster on his mouth is removed now, which indicates they trust Melas to return. Note also the papers upon the table. They are the instruments of their design contracts, deeds, and letters intended to secure the sisters' consent.
Indeed, Holmes. And Sophie? Is she in view?
Yes, notice the pallor of her face and the fear in her eyes. She is aware of our presence, though she cannot signal openly. Her trust must remain implicit in our intervention. Now, we proceed carefully.
Holmes crept toward the table, examining the papers. This doubt, The candlelight flickered across his sharp features, throwing long shadows upon the walls. Suddenly, a door at the far end of the room opened, and Latimer himself appeared, his dark eyes blazing with suspicion.
What is the meaning of this intrusion? He demanded, his hand twitching toward a concealed weapon. Who dares to enter my house unbidden?
You, Mr. Latimer, will be well advised to remain calm, Holmes replied, his voice low and measured. There is no need for violence. Yet I warn you, any attempt to harm these people will result in your immediate apprehension.
You speak boldly, stranger, Latimer hissed. Do you imagine yourself immune from the consequences of meddling in my affairs?
I imagine nothing save that you have underestimated both my skill and my patience. Watson, the constables are in position. At my signal, they will enter and secure this room.
At a subtle gesture from Holmes, the door behind us burst open, and Lestrade, followed by his men, stormed the chamber. A brief struggle ensued. Kemp lunged toward the table, attempting to seize the documents, but Holmes's swift movement intercepted him. Within moments, both villains were restrained, their faces contorted with rage and alarm. Kratides and his sister were released from their bonds, and the relief in their eyes was palpable.
Thank God, Paul Kratides exclaimed, tears filling his eyes. I feared that we would never see freedom again.
Oh, Mr. Melas, Mr. Holmes, she whispered, clutching Melas's hand. I feared I should be lost forever. How can I ever repay you?
Madam, it was my duty, and my hope was that these gentlemen, Holmes and Watson, would guide me to a safe conclusion, he said humbly.
Indeed, your courage, Mr. Melas, has been invaluable, Holmes said, his voice firm yet approving. You followed instructions exactly, and in doing so, you have saved 2 lives. Watson, see how the threads of observation, deduction, and human courage intertwine to achieve success. Elementary, yet profound.
Holmes, your genius continues to astonish me, I said, my voice catching with emotion. I have witnessed your methods before, but never so fully. To think that observation and reasoning could triumph over danger so directly. The villains were taken into custody by Lestrade and his constables, their threats rendered impotent by the swift justice brought upon them. Holmes meticulously examined the documents, noting which had been intended to coerce Sophie Kratides into signing away her rights, and which had been purely for intimidation. Every detail of the scheme, which might have remained hidden, was laid bare by the keen intellect of Sherlock Holmes.
Observe, Watson, Holmes said quietly, how human weakness and greed are exploited by cunning men. Yet even the smallest error, the momentary hesitation of the villains, the courage of Mr. Melas provides the opportunity for justice. Note also how the elements of surprise, timing, and knowledge of human behavior combine to secure success. It is never mere chance. To you.
With the crisis resolved, we escorted the freed Krathated siblings to a safe lodging arranged through the consulate. Paul's gratitude was boundless, and Sophie's relief so complete that her pale cheeks regained a hint of color. As for Holmes, he leaned back in his chair at Baker Street that night, his eyes reflecting the satisfaction of a plan executed with precision. Holmes, I said, finally allowing myself to relax. You make the impossible seem inevitable, Kip. How could anyone, confronted with such danger and secrecy, hope to succeed without your mind to guide them?
Watson, it is nothing but the application of careful observation, logical deduction, and timely action. In a sense, all men possess the faculties. Few take the trouble to cultivate them. And courage, my dear fellow, is indispensable. Dispensable. Melas possessed it, and so did you, in your stead.
And so, dear listeners, another adventure of Sherlock Holmes reached its conclusion. Yet even as the villains were secured and the Kratides siblings restored to safety, I knew that London held countless secrets and that Holmes's powers would once again be called upon to illuminate them. For in the heart of that great city, darkness and deceit lurked in every shadow, awaiting the sharp eye and keener mind of the consulting detective. In the final part, we shall reflect upon the lessons of this adventure, the subtle genius of Holmes's deductions, and the courage of those whose fates he saved.